Aloha, geek fans! Welcome back. It's time for another Geek Review, and today I'm joined by Rachel McLeod. I'm Shane Gooch, and we're going to do an in-depth review of Downfall. Downfall is a German movie directed by Oliver Hirschspiegel, starring Bruno Ganz as Adolf Hitler and Alexandria Maria Laura as Trudel Young, who plays a secretary in the bunker watching all these crazy events unfold. Rachel, why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about Downfall? What is it about?
Okay, Downfall is a story about the last days of Adolf Hitler in the bunker, but more than that, it's a downfall of the city of Berlin and the people that are most impacted and affected by the inner circle happenings that occur within the bunker itself. It's a very deep, broad story. Excuse me. Deep, broad story. And Downfall is just aptly named. This is such an ambitious film, and the beauty of it, it's a German film, German actors, German production, German language, no British accents here.
Oh, I hate the British accents. I love the authenticity of this movie.
Yeah.
Let's get right into this. We're gonna talk about some of the key scenes in the movie that we really enjoy. And this movie is well acted. It's well filmed. There's a lot of stuff we could talk about. We don't want to go on forever. We're gonna get right to it until we see Hitler. The very first time we see Hitler, we see him from behind. He's walking into some sort of war room. He's talking to his generals, and he's learned that the Russians have gained a lot of ground. The generals are trying to be pleasant. Everything's normal. Hey, happy birthday, Hitler. Everything's cool.
Right.
And things start to go downhill from there once Hitler learns the details of how close the Russians are to the front line, to the city of Berlin.
Right. What you're going to get out of this movie is that, first off, this movie is being told from very different perspective. This is told from the German people. So again, I love this movie for the fact that it's coming from the Germans. It's a German story, German people, and it's coming from the perspective of the private secretary, Trudel Jung, and Gerda Christian, the other secretary. They're seeing these events occur, and they're telling you the narrative from their perspective. And of course, there's other perspectives as well. But the beauty of it is that you're seeing the gradual decline of Adolf Hitler's mental state and the gradual decline of everybody else's confidence in his dream and his vision for the greater Germania, the greater Berlin, whatever have you. The beauty of that scene is your first impression is Hitler still has a little bit of stability. He's still together, more or less. You'll see some subtle hand gestures and body language that says maybe he's physically deteriorating.
He's still in control, though, and he still feels he's in control, but we also get the first hints that he's maybe losing some of that control on the periphery. So in the bunker, he's in charge. In Berlin, he's in charge, but now, 12 kilometers away, his generals are telling him kind of different stories. Hitler complains, saying, I had to ask. They didn't even tell me. You're supposed to tell me because I'm the leader. Right. So already we're seeing a breakdown on the periphery of Hitler's power. But it's early in the movie. And as we transition into a scene after that where Hitler's giving out medals. He's saying goodbye to some of his fellow officers who are going off to other parts of Germany. And now his power base is starting to erode. He's really starting to be isolated in Berlin. And we see another great scene that really shows Hitler is not quite cognizant of the reality of the situation. He talks to his lead architect, Albert Speer, about their great plans for Berlin. Oh, it's fantastic that Berlin is being bombed and destroyed. It'll make it easier to build this amazing city that we have planned. They're overlooking this giant model of Berlin, and everything's just great. Albert Speer, it's great. You're a great architect. This is going to be fantastic.
Right. That's a beautiful scene. Albert Speer was his primary architect. He had basically designed a future Berlin. I think it was just really called Germania, where it's following the architectural models of ancient Rome and the classical Greco-Roman styles. He's got this big scale model of a city laid out on a table. And by this time, the Russian army are encroaching upon Berlin, surrounding it. Most of the generals have some pretty good idea that they're screwed, that Berlin is looking at its last days as a city. And most of the city outside of the Chancellery building where the bunker is held is basically wrecked. It's totally decimated. But here, by contrast, you have this beautiful sprawling model city that Albert Speer has made or constructed. And here, Adolf Hitler is kind of reminiscing about all this dream that he had, this beautiful vision of a new Germany. That was interesting. A new Germany.
We're being attacked.
Like, a new Germany, a new Reich, and this wonderful empire that he's built. And even while other generals are trying to convince Hitler, hey, now's the time to flee, now's the time to run, Albert Speer says, no, you need to be on the final stage, and the final curtain falls. You need to be at the stage. You need to be here in Berlin.
This is where you belong.
When the curtain falls, you need to be there on stage to see it happen. This is your destiny. This is your vision. You need to see it through, which is kind of a conspiratorial, I want you to die kind of moment.
And we learn later in the film with Speer, who talks to Hitler again, that he's been disobeying Hitler's commands because while Albert Speer was an architect, eventually, I forget how, Hitler assigns him to the factories to overlook weapons production, to overlook plane production.
Right.
And it's actually very fascinating if you read the story of Albert Speer because he does an incredible job in those times of actually ramping up production, even towards nearly the end of the war. He's able to maintain production because he's just such a skilled man. And when Hitler wants to wipe out what's left of Germany, like forget it, all's lost, blow it up. Albert Speer says no, and he tells Hitler that. So we see that first signs this where Speer's telling Hitler, no, you should stay in the city. I think that'll be better for everyone.
Yeah. Now, if you want to talk about madness, the beautiful thing about Albert Speer is he's been trusted by Hitler for so long with war munitions, with production, with architecture, the whole 9 yards. Never throughout this entire movie, throughout the whole entire play of history, did Hitler ever doubt Albert Speer. So when Albert Speer's like listening to these orders about, oh, you lay this whole place to waste so that we can rebuild, Albert Speer, no, he doesn't want this to ever occur. He doesn't like this plan. He wants to rebel in every step of the way. He even plans to assassinate Hitler.
Albert Speer was a true believer in Hitler until he realized, wait, this is not a good idea.
Right, and he was part of the resistance.
Yes.
He was part of the resistance. I mean, it might be after the fact, but he did grow a brain and decide that this is not the way he wants to go in history. But at no point did Hitler ever doubt Albert Speer. So that's kind of like the juicy part of this whole, some of these dramas, that there are some people who really got the clue, rebelled against Hitler, but Hitler simply did not know. He was continuously trusting. He was so self-delusional. I'm going to build this city. I'm going to rebuild the Reich. And my friends are all going to be with me, right?
And that delusion is upheld by the people in the bunker. The people in the bunker continue to show loyalty to Hitler until the end. Some of them, they're wiser about the situation. They try to get Hitler to see the situation, but they still maintain their personal loyalty. So now we're going to transfer to probably the most famous scenes in the movie.
Right.
You've seen the parodies of this. Hitler going nuts, talking to his generals in the war room. So in the war room, we get an interesting contrast. We have one side where these generals, who are very loyal to Hitler, they remain loyal to Hitler till the end, but they also are not delusional. They think to themselves, wait, we see the armies, we don't have this army, the Russians are encroaching, we need to do X, Y, and Z, but Hitler has these other bizarre ideas of, get Steiner to come, Steiner. He says it over and over again, like that magically is going to bring forth this army from this general, but that doesn't happen. So in these war room scenes is where we see the true breakdown of Hitler, I feel. Because in the first scene, everything's relatively calm, but things just start to fall down. Is the delusion upon delusion. This racks up, and Hitler just becomes more and more crazed about we're gonna have this mighty blow to the Russian army, and all these great things are gonna happen. I find it fascinating that the characters that are watching them, for the most part, there are a few exceptions, but for the most part, we're staying with Hitler. We can't surrender.
Right.
The Fuhrer is the Fuhrer.
Right. What's beautiful about these war room scenes and some of the setup is the atmosphere. For most of the movie that takes place inside the bunker, you do get that claustrophobic, tense feeling of being in a closed, tense space.
Yes.
And you do hear in the backdrop the shelling, the artillery explosions, and so forth and so on. The personalities within that atmosphere are struggling with Hitler's fantasy versus the encroaching reality.
Yes.
And some people, just out of desperation, want to believe Hitler's dream.
Yes.
They want to believe that there is going to be a turning point, that General Steiger and the 12th Army are going to converge and wipe out Zhukov's army out in the west, out in the south. And then there's some who's like, that's impossible, it's not going to happen. There's some generals in the field like, look, I've checked the maps, I've consulted, it ain't happening. But I do want to believe that Hitler's right, because he's been right up to this point. Up until Operation Barbarossa, when they invaded Russia,
he conquered all
of Europe.
Yeah.
Right? So they had really, up to a certain point, they had no reason to doubt Hitler. Think about all the things that he accomplished. It's like...
It's just this weird bubble, because I feel like it's Hitler's world is shown is continuously shrinking. So prior to the movie beginning, they have a scene very early in the movie. I think it might be one of the first scenes where they're showing hiring some of these one of the secretaries, and this is not taking place in the bunker. I don't even think it's in Berlin. It's at some.
Well,
some,
it's years before.
It's years before. So at this point, Hitler has a wide sphere of influence. But by the time we get to the bunker, his world essentially is slowly shrinking. And then once he sends out all his generals to continue the war or undermine him, in the case of many of them, his world shrinks further. And then until it's only Berlin is his world. Then it's only the Chancellery building and some of the surrounding buildings. And then that's not his world anymore. Then it's only the bunker is his world. It's the only place he still controls. It's the only in this little tiny sphere, he's still the king. And he's still manipulating these armies in his mind, and it's just a fascinating downfall.
Right, and maybe only in the end does it really get to seem like it's only Hitler that believes Hitler's dream.
Yes, people believed in Hitler, but the dream of Hitler, it started falling apart. And now we're to get to some of the subplots. What did you think of some like the doctor subplot or the Peter Kranz, the kid subplot? There were a number of subplots in this film, so it wasn't just Hitler's story.
Right.
Of course, like you said, a lot of it's told from the secretary's perspective, but there's other perspectives we see in the city of Berlin that also show the viewer how delusional Adolf Hitler is.
Right. The beautiful thing about this movie is, like we're trying to tell you, is that it's a very broad film. It isn't just Hitler's downfall, it's the downfall of Berlin. It's the downfall of the people around the bunker and around Hitler himself and his inner circle. And we get that through the subplots. And one of the major subplots that I was most impressed with is a subplot with a doctor. His last name is Oberst. He's the head of the health department, or I guess it would be the health department for the Wehrmacht, the regular army, the regular German army. He's not affiliated necessarily with the SS. Maybe loosely he's affiliated, or maybe he's sort of like given orders by the SS, but he himself does not identify solely as SS. And in the one of the earliest scenes of the movie, you're seeing the early evacuation stages of Berlin, and he's forced to make a choice between evacuating and fleeing with the SS, or staying with the regular soldiers, looking after their care in the hospitals and trying to maintain some kind of order for civilians, women and children, and so forth and so on. And the SS leadership is basically giving him the ultimatum: you either come with us and flee, or you stay here and probably die. And by the way, we don't see any value in the women and children. They're just going to be casualties of war. This happens.
The soldiers, they'll find food. They're good soldiers.
They'll look after themselves. That's what soldiers do.
They'll take care of it. Don't worry about that.
So Oberst decides to stay. And he actually legitimately cares about, and he's already made his decision. My loyalties lie with the people. Much like in the way that Albert Speer makes that decision. I'm not going to do the scorched earth policy. I'm going to stay. I'm looking after the women and the children and the everyday regular German soldier who could care less about the politics, could care less about the Nazism, whatever. They care about surviving this situation. The city is basically bombarded constantly.
Now, what do you think about the scene of Peter Kranz, which is this like a 12-year-old Hitler youth character who's actually fighting on the front lines? He's a 12-year-old kid. It's like the child soldiers you hear about today. Well, they had him in Nazi Germany. It's incredible.
This is a touching subplot in the sense that we do see where history and this, let me back up a bit. This movie really was quite ambitious in trying to draw in as much of the factual as possible. And they introduced this scene with Peter
Kranz.
Peter Kranz, a young, 12-year-old Nazi youth kid who was decorated for basically knocking out 2 tanks with anti-tank missiles. And the story, the subplot as it's portrayed in the film, is basically inspired by actual footage that was drawn from archival footage.
Final footage of Hitler that we have.
Yeah.
It's Hitler handing out medals to the Hitler Youth, or these young soldiers, and one of them is this character. And I don't know if you actually know anything about the person for real, but we see that we see the medals being given. So I don't know if the filmmakers went, well, let's make up a plot that would be appropriate to that scene that we actually have video footage of Hitler's final video footage, or if there's some other material about there, other historical facts that I'm not sure.
But whether I mean, it's certainly inspired by factual.
Right. It doesn't matter if the story is real now. The point is, it's telling you a greater truth about the war and about how they had these. They were so desperate they had child soldiers in the final days of the Reich.
And for the greater purpose of introducing that greater truth, we get a wonderful scene with the father of Peter Krantz coming and saying, "What are you doing? You need to be home. Do you have any idea what's happening? You, how old are you?" You know, talking to his little comrades there. "You're 14, you're 12, you're 16. What are you doing here? You think you're so tough? What front did you fight on?" "Oh, I haven't yet had the honor to fight in the front yet." It's like, you snot-nosed little punk. You're going to die.
Yep.
There's going to be armies, plural, coming after you, and they're going to have tank shells and artillery. You're going to die.
And there's the implication, because his dad is missing an arm, that he was a soldier and he did fight.
I mean, never
And he
mind
knows
that
this.
these kids are surrounded by pothole, craters and shells are falling and this and that.
They're running out of ammunition, so they just have to use random stuff to fill their cannons with. I mean, it's the situation is so desperate, but they've been so brainwashed by the Nazi propaganda machine that they're in it. We're doing this. We're going to do this. And of course, throughout the film, we see they die.
Yeah.
I think most of those characters,
All of them except for that kid.
all except for the kid who survives. So now let's talk about survival. Let's move on to the post-Hitler portion of this film. So Hitler, maybe 3/4 way through the film, as we know, he commits suicide with Eva Braun. Their bodies set on fire, etc., etc. At that point, Goebbels tries to take over, tries to take command, but he has no influence outside of the bunker. He's done. Himmler and their other major players have already attempted or are attempting to take command of the Reich, blah, 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 blah. So now Goebbels tries to make a last stand. No, we're not surrendering. But at this point, the bunker splits into basically two camps. Those that are just going to go, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
This is it. There's no hope. And those that go, oh my God, I now realize the mistake I made. I need to escape.
Yeah.
What did you think of this portion of the film?
I think once you know what's going to happen, you obviously know that Hitler's going to die. Once he dies, once he commits suicide with Eva Braun, you realize everyone's true colors will come out. Either you're going to follow the dreamer to his doom, and to his death. It's, oh, I've been so wrapped up in Hitler's dream, I can't possibly live without that dream. Life's not worth it. I'm going to go off myself along with the Fuhrer. You get that camp. And then you get some folks who say, I've never really trusted Hitler to begin with, or I've had my doubts, or, oh my God, this is insane.
What was I thinking?
What was I thinking? I need to escape, I need to flee, I need to surrender. It's wonderful to see that contrast, because it tells you that the real truth is that not everybody was totally on board with Hitler, and not everybody was a crazed, delusional psychopath or maniac or whatever have you, or delusional. So I like seeing that. The reality of it, it's like, even the secretaries, which, the heart of the story, some of the heart of the story was the secretaries, they're having that debate, even as early as that Steiger blow up scene, they're having that debate. It's like, can you believe it? All these traitors, all this treachery, and all these generals are falling over. Should we stay? Should we go? Should we stay? Should we go? Even to the very end, it's like, fear dictated most of their actions. But then you see that once Hitler has died, and once his dream has died with him, what's left? They have to decide what's left. And for the secretaries anyway, they decide that their lives are left. There's got to be something more to this.
And part of what is compelling about these scenes and all the other scenes we've talked about is the cast. Yeah. So I thought the cast of this movie was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was definitely well casted in terms of trying to fit the person to the actual historical figure. I mean, Bruno Ganz is the obvious person to point to.
He sells it so
He's
much.
Hitler.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at him and I go, did they resurrect Hitler? I don't know how did this happen. But I mean, other characters. I like Goebbels. That guy's scary.
He is chilling.
He's chilling.
And I tell you, we can go on and on and on about this movie. And maybe there'll be a part 2. Who knows? But as far as the cast goes, some of the impressive actors and actresses. Goebbels' wife, Harfouch, Magda Goebbels. Oh my God, she chills the ever living out of me, because for a performance, she knows what she has to do as an actress. She has to perform a role where 6 children must die. The Goebbels children, and she sells it. She's scary.
Yes.
She's scary, scary, scary. Sells it. I don't think you could say enough about her. She not only looks the part, which is also something great about this casting, is almost every actor and actress looks the part. You put them side by side with black and white photos, they look dead on.
And we'll talk about that more in a moment about when
Yeah.
we talk about the history. But yes, it's great casting.
Great casting. Joseph Goebbels looks the part. He gives that.
Oh,
He doesn't say much in this movie.
He's so
But he
creepy.
doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. He
He's
just
so
looks the part.
creepy.
And he is so wrapped up in that delusion. It makes you want to believe the delusion.
Yeah, the one scene where he actually says a lot is right after Hitler dies, and like, no, we're not surrendering. We're staying till the end. And he basically turns into Hitler.
I mean, even
He becomes that crazed war room scene, but now it's Goebbels doing the crazy.
I mean, some of the chilling scenes when you introduce the Goebbels family to the bunker, and they're singing songs to Hitler, whatever have you, these jolly, happy little songs.
Oh, man.
Chilling.
Oh,
They look the part, they act the part, they are the part. They chill me.
They're good little Nordic kids. Oh, it's great. Those little look, they're all blonde-haired and blue-eyed and wonderful. It's fantastic.
Ava Braun, the actress Julianne Kohler, who plays Ava Braun, another chilling performance. She sells it. She looks the part. She is the part.
She's fully invested in Hitler.
Right.
She believes in Hitler. Her brother, at some point, her brother-in-law, tries to convince her, hey, we got to leave. We got to get out of here.
You know,
What are you talking about? Why would we do that?
and obviously the actor behind Albert Speer, Heino Ferch, if I mispronounce it, hey, I tried.
Probably mispronounced all these names.
But the actor behind Albert Speer is, again, very convincing role. They look the part. Yeah.
It's fantastic. And now I want to talk a little bit about the history. I mean, this is an in-depth review. Rachel has degrees in history and sociology. I'm working on getting a degree in history and becoming an historian. And if you've seen some of our past reviews we've done, we delve a little bit deeper into some other details that maybe other reviewers of film might not do because maybe they don't know about the topic well enough or they're just not interested. But we're going to add a little bit more of that flavor. And I really like it when I see period pieces that are authentic to the period. I understand for thematic reasons, for pacing, you might have to rearrange when some plot points happen. You might have to skirt over some things. But there's other things where I hate it when they change it. I don't know why they do. Like, I hate when they change buildings or costumes or music or this or that. It's like, why would you change that? It doesn't affect the story. Here, they go out of their way to get the details right. They took old plans from the bunker. They took eyewitness accounts.
Yeah.
Some of the actual dialogue is taken from accounts from the time. The layout of the bunker that actually follows the layout of the bunker.
Yeah.
The uniforms. The look of Berlin.
Yes.
Oh my! It looks like all those old videos I've seen, all those
Yeah.
old films.
This is a scary film, and I tell you, if you thought our review of Schindler's List was top notch, this only the best for you for this one, because I tell you, I love this movie for so many reasons. One, most of the screenplay was taken from the memoirs and the primary sources of the secretaries, the private secretaries of Adolf Hitler. We're talking Jung and we're talking Christian. They had access to his itinerary, his daily reports, his journals. They were there in the bunker. They survived the bunker. Hence, that's the prelude. When you saw the first scene in this movie is the prelude. She admits, hey, how you doing? The secretary, lays it up for you. You see the woman. She's there. She's telling you the story.
It's fantastic. And they also take stuff from Albert Speer, who wrote his memoirs about his experiences, which were more brief. He was in the bunker the whole time. But that key scene where he actually meets Hitler, I've read the book. That's the scene he describes. So I love it when the history is brought to life in this way. You could point to minor errors they made here and there, but this is a film, and they still do a fantastic job. It's just terrific.
And even the minor errors don't undermine the narrative whatsoever.
Right.
They don't undermine the truth of the stories. They don't undermine the course of events.
Yeah, the general outline is true. This is what happened. And unless you're an actual historian, those minor details you'll never notice, and they do their best to make it authentic, and I really appreciate that. But before we get to our score, every movie it has some flaws. It's not perfect. It's very hard to achieve perfection. Did you have some drawbacks or some negatives that you had for this film?
When I first saw this film, I couldn't help but compare it to other films that told the same story. Like, for example, The Bunker, starring Anthony Hopkins as Hitler. Maybe you're familiar with it. This movie doesn't tell maybe as complete as a story as some of the other films, but I had to keep in mind that this film was told from different points of view. Rather than having this story told by the victor or the winners or the Brits, if you will, or the Allies, this is very much a German story told by the German people from those who were there, from those who survived, versus those who conquered the city, took it over, and discovered the bunker.
That doesn't seem like a negative to me. That's just a different way the movie's done.
In the sense that one of the scenes that I thought could have been included was the scene where Albert Speer actually tries to assassinate Hitler through introducing a canister of Zyklon B into the air shaft. There was that could have been pivotal. That could have at least given you an idea that Albert Speer was in fact trying to conspire to kill Adolf Hitler before most of the film actually, played itself out. I had heard and seen some criticism that certain uniforms might have been like and that some persons weren't actually there in the bunker. There was a third vice admiral from the Navy that was or wasn't there. That's all pish posh to me. That's all crap.
Okay, well, let me give you what I think is those are nitpicky.
Yeah,
let me give you
all nitpicky
maybe what I think is a more major problem with the film. That is post-Hitler. I just found the film less compelling when Hitler died. Once he died, my interest level went from this is the best thing ever to this is good. So that for me was it was a big drop off, but I knew it was going to be a big drop off because I was so invested in the Hitler story. The other stories, like these other subplots, they were all well done. They were all good. I found them interesting. I found them compelling, but not as compelling as Hitler. Hitler was what I found compelling. So this film is amazing, and this drop off is slight, and it doesn't really affect my score, as you'll see. But it is a point that I've heard other people, though, being more negative about this. Where they say, oh, once Hitler leaves, I just don't care. That's not me, but I do feel like maybe they could have shortened the post-Hitler scenes just a little bit, just tightened it up a little bit, maybe not have it quite as long. Again, you'll see in my story, that doesn't matter really too much, but it is a concern, and maybe something. If you're thinking about making this film or film like it again, and you know there's a main character that's intrinsic to the story, that's at the center, that character dies, what's going to happen post that character? So that's one criticism I have. I think proper criticism I would give of the film.
I think my drawback is actually, in some sense, that I think the reputation of the film preceded the film, because I think I've heard more about the film before I actually saw the film. Obviously with the memes and the parodies and whatever have you, they all build up, oh, the Hitler scene, the Hitler scene, the Hitler scene. You think that's the primary focus of the movie, and maybe you're geared up for that, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to see this movie and Hitler's going to be the focus. Well, once you watch the film, he isn't entirely the focus.
Right.
The focus broadens and expands. So maybe for my drawback is you get so hyped up over Hitler, and you know what's happening because unless you lived in a cave, you know that Hitler's going to die. You know what goes on in the bunker. Your expectations are maybe for that big build-up scene and great acting and or great, passionate Hitler scenes.
Then the other scenes are not going to be what you're looking for because you didn't expect that. For me, that was not an issue whatsoever because I didn't know much about the film before watching it. I just heard it was really good, and I'm like, oh, it's really good, and it's actually a German film about a German story. Okay, let me watch this. But you're right. If you had just been watching all those parodies, again, once Hitler dies, you're going to be really like, oh, wait, where's more
what
Hitler?
A bummer. It's like, what a bummer.
Right. But anyways, we've been going on for a long time, as we are prone to do. Let us now give us a review. You can use whatever system you like. I use a star system. Do whatever you want, because that's how it works here at Geeks of the Movies.
Seeing it's like Oscar season, I would actually give this 5 Oscars.
Out of how many?
5.
5 Oscars out of 5. Excellent.
Yeah. Best picture, best actor, best actress, best supporting cast,
best cinematography.
And best cinematography. That's 5 right there.
Okay, excellent. I always use a star system, and I'm also will be giving an equivalent score of 5 out of 5 stars. This film is a masterpiece. If you're interested in history, interested in Hitler, you're interested in an amazing dramatic story, this is a movie you want to see. We're going to do more of this in the future, hopefully, with Rachel and myself. We're going to do more in-depth reviews. We're going to bring in the history, maybe bring in some of the science, bring in some other details that maybe some folks are not so interested in, but I'm interested in. Rachel's interested in. And we know there's an audience for it, or hopefully there it is. Anyways, I am Shane Gurich. This is
Rachel McLeod.
And we've been Geeks at the Movies.